So
She still can't zoom in from the beach, you know?
Yeah, come on.
you know, as her first vacation away as a new mom after 18 months or 20
Yeah,
months.
that's a biggie. That's
Yeah.
always a biggie, yeah.
I was just
There is life.
exactly. I think she was bemoaning the fact that she was having to leave her little guy, and I'm like, you know what? It'll be all okay. Grandma and Grandpa got this, and
Yeah, we did that right about that time.
yeah.
I think it takes about 10 minutes to adjust.
Yeah, right. We didn't have any trouble at all.
Exactly. All right, so we'll give Jack another second. And if Jack doesn't come, I will make sure to reach out to him over the weekend and just catch up with him prior to next Tuesday's select board meeting and special town meeting, just so he's in the loop. He likes to make sure he knows what's going on. So if he misses this meeting,
Oh, He just wrote me to resend the link, so I'm gonna do it right now.
okay, great.
Okay, it's been sent.
Awesome. Okay, so hopefully he will make it. All right, I'm gonna call to order the zoning bylaw working group meeting of December 9th, 2021 at 10:36 a.m. So present Katie Dugan.
President Peter Pescatori.
Woody Chidick, present.
Tom Callahan.
Awesome.
Helen.
Jen Oram.
Thanks, guys. Okay. First order of business is approval of the minutes from our last meeting in November. So I'm going to make a motion to approve the minutes from November 23rd, 2021. Can I get a second?
Second, Woody Chidick.
I, Katie Dugan.
Woody Chidick, aye.
Jen Oram, aye.
Peter Pescatori, aye.
John Helen, I.
Right. And Tom Callahan, we're going to take you as an I. Okay. Tom, can we get an I on the minutes from November 23rd?
I'm all set with them.
Aye.
I-
Okay.
oh,
Before we jump into the agenda, I just wanted to update the committee quickly on one thing. The good news is that a individual in town, her name is Denise Bordonaro, has reached out to Lauren, and Lauren preliminary connected with me. She has an interest in zoning. She moved to Cohasset in 2014. Previously, prior to that, she spent 20 years in Andover, was on the Andover ZBA, and professionally is a commercial real estate lawyer, having worked for Hale and Dorr, and then worked on the corporate side at Staples. So she has an interest in master plan, in zoning. So I, after Lauren sent her some preliminary information, I followed up and sent a little bit more information around what master plan has been working on, along with the zoning bylaw working group. She actually attended our master plan meeting on Monday just to get a sense of that committee. But I was going to try and meet with her in January, because she asked just to find out more about where she could potentially join committees. But I wanted to put that out there, Tom, to you, and Woody, to you, in case you guys, as you think ahead to May elections, know of opening on your board, because she may be a good fit on both planning or on ZBA, depending on what the needs of those committees look like. And that would give her potential entree and seats onto some of these other liaison positions. So
Yeah, as far as zoning goes, I haven't gotten an inkling that anybody is thinking about getting off. I mean,
Okay.
we usually talk about that in June of every year, but
Okay,
I have an opening at Open Space and Recreation. that I'm, at large, so she would be welcome to apply. And then, I would be glad to have her take my spot on the bylaw group.
okay.
No way, Peter.
Wow, that was very smooth, Peter.
I'm not trying to escape.
But if you could create some keys to the handcuffs that we've got.
I recognize, though, that she has the background that would most benefit the committee, whereas I'm not as legally grounded in this stuff in the bylaws as she is. So
Okay.
I think you would be getting an upgrade.
I could point out that, is there a reason why we couldn't add her without getting rid of Peter? Peter will never speak to me again after this, but
No, I think we could definitely request the select board to reopen the charge and add
sure.
a citizen at large. And again, it might be the right time to do that because some of the committees that we looked at from a benchmarking perspective did have citizen at large positions. And so if we were open to that, we certainly could consider adding a citizen at large. It would need to be obviously a call for everybody to apply, but if
Yeah,
we
exactly. Yeah, you'd have to win the seat.
Exactly.
And I also may say that, if Peter needs to scale back his commitment a little bit, I mean, this would be a good time to allow him to scale back a little bit. But Peter, I'm so uncomfortable giving you these compliments. But Peter, well, he beat me at golf, so not that that's hard. But I do think that Peter brings a very important perspective.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
And years of wrangling town meeting too. So,
Yeah.
and I don't know what the status of planning board is going to be. I believe the only member that's up for election is Eric Potter. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct.
Okay. Well,
Eric's on liaison on my committee as well. So
okay.
I hope
Well, I
he
just
gets-
wanted to throw it out there because it's always exciting when you have like fresh volunteers coming forward. So I wanted to kind of roll out the red carpet.
and it's a bit of a rarity too.
It is, especially a committee member with some interesting.
Qualifications, yeah.
Yeah. So I will keep people posted, but we agreed that we would catch up in January. And I'll circle back to the group after I meet with her individually. And if she wants to meet more members, I assume all of you guys would be open to having a conversation with her.
I would like to talk to her.
Okay.
Yeah, I would too, because you never know when an opening does open up and I'd like to know who's out there. even if
Yeah.
we have no felt need at the moment.
Okay. Great. Well, if you guys, I'm happy to introduce you to her now, or I can meet with her first and then introduce her in January. Let's do January just because it feels like it's gonna be a rush.
I think that's the correct process anyway.
Right. I'd like to speak to her independently anyway, but I think January for the committee makes sense.
Great. So that was exciting news I wanted to share. So the focus of today's meeting was really going through the draft RFP and getting comments on the language in that draft.
It's an RFQ, isn't it? Is it, remember we discussed the distinction between the two?
Yes, and I need to just retrain my mind. So the technical difference between RFP and RFQ is RFP has to be price driven and RFQ is qualification driven. I have a call into Michelle Leary just to make sure that changing it to an RFQ and all of the references in the document is the right move. And I'll defer to her expertise. But again, Tom, you rightly note that our job here is to do a request for qualifications so that we are able to review and assess based on the proposals and the services offered versus just purely on price.
Yeah. I got about half, well, I got about a quarter of the way through it. I didn't get all the way through.
No, and that's my fault.
But on page 9,
Yeah, Jen, do you mind giving me share screen privileges? Got it.
You're all set. Yep.
Okay. Awesome.
on page 9, project period.
And if people want to finish giving their comments after the meeting, my plan was to try and work on this over the weekend, just to incorporate everything so that I could get the final draft out. So if people have other nits and gnats, feel free to, I'm sorry, Peter, where were you? On
Page 9, this is, I think it's another, okay, right there, let's see. At the top, it was project about, oh, well, a ton of, it's different. Okay, I had an older version.
Okay,
Sorry, I was looking
Yeah,
at an
okay.
older version. It's already been corrected, I guess.
okay, awesome. So I'm gonna go back to beginning. And Peter, I had sent out a draft apology.
I know, I saw it. I
Yeah.
downloaded it and I thought I was, anyway, I must have opened the
The
older
wrong
version that I had on the file.
Yeah, no worries. Okay. So change this to a request for qualifications. All right. Legal notice, this section, Michelle has already reviewed. In fact, yesterday, when I sent it out to the group, I sent it out to Michelle and Lauren for comment, and I asked them to get back to me by end of day Friday with any comments that they have. So Michelle will go through this one more time from a procurement perspective to make sure that everything is up to snuff before I send it out to the planning board and select board. She's gone through it briefly last week. So legal notice, Michelle will sanity check for us. This timeline here is the same as what we discussed at our last meeting. I think the only thing that changed here is that let's see. Oh, Michelle's suggestion was that for best practices, and said that since we have the ability to do things via Zoom now, is that the RFQs, when they're received, will actually be opened via Zoom so that everybody is aware of who submitted final bids. So that was a good best practices catch there. As we talk, I'm sorry.
Could we go to the accountability section? It was on page 10 in the one I was reading,
Okay.
but I don't know if that's the correct page now.
Yep. I just wanted to see if there were any other comments before that.
I didn't have any.
Okay. All right. Eight, 9.
Oh, here's project period. All right, stop. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, the second sentence there, you've got project is anticipated, expected. Pick
Okay.
one.
Yes. Okay.
And then keep scrolling down the next page, I think is accountability. Oh, there's accountability. Okay.
Yep.
So the planning director, so the consultant will work directly with the planning director under the advisory guidance of the zoning working group. I assume, all right, with additional policy direction from the select board and planning board. Lauren, so I think just from a management standpoint, the consultant can't be getting input from several groups. it has to be, you have to, maybe I'm reading this wrong, but there has to be one point of contact for all of the work product.
So thank you, Peter, for raising this, because when I wrote this, I think I was trying to accomplish too many things. So here's my thought process. The consultant needs to be connected to a town hall employee. And Jen, I mean, it's either you or Lauren. And so I'm open to either. I mean, when we met with Lauren and Michelle last week, Lauren had raised her hand, but you raise a good point, Peter, is that Lauren isn't the ex officio town hall member connected to our working group. And so maybe it makes more sense to have you, Jen, be the direct conduit. So I'm going to pause there and Jen, let you answer that question. Or
I mean, I would be glad to do it. I do think in most cases, it is the planning director with zoning. If you read a lot of different, the planning director is normally involved in the major liaison. I'm happy to do it, but maybe we could back each other up. Could it be the planning department?
yeah, okay.
You know, because we just have so many initiatives and we want
Yeah,
to keep it.
I would have a concern about bandwidth, whether, Lauren certainly is knowledgeable, you certainly are knowledgeable, but you guys are so back, you guys have so much on your plate. You have to do this, but, I'd be concerned about the workload.
Exactly. I don't want.
I like the idea of making it the planning department, and then I'll write a little thing that says, Jen, on your background, do you mind sending me just one sentence on your background to include here? And I'll reference both of you.
Sure, absolutely.
So I think that makes sense.
But you have to clean up the language here.
I definitely have to clean up the language here. So this is where I think we need to focus on cleaning up the language. So the consultant has to work for the town. So the consultant has to work for the planning board.
Right, but you can only have one person in, managing that process,
So-
one group.
I think it should be the zoning bylaw working group. And I would propose deleting the direction from the select board and the planning board here. I guess my only concern, or the only reason I included it here, is just being sensitive to the fact that those two committees or those two stakeholders are going to be extremely important in the process. But maybe,
May I make a suggestion?
yeah, go ahead, Jack, sorry.
I think you're right that it's important that those groups be involved, but that doesn't mean that the consultant reports to them.
Okay.
So how do we?
Or takes direction from them.
Right, yeah, it's critical that only one point of
Yes.
contact is giving.
And they work through Katie, most likely. I mean, I don't know, should they, if the responsibility is going to be for the working group put over under the planning department, then that's a fairly big sea change.
Well, what I would suggest is that we kind of separate report to, and we want to include the other groups in
Oh, of
there.
course, but
So we would put that in there to report, not to so much to report to, but to be part of whatever, how we ever wish to wordsmith it, so that they're involved in the process, but they're not the controlling entity, if you know what I mean. So I think that's
Yeah, that direction has to bubble up to a central point to
right.
one-on-one with the consultant.
But you don't
And
want,
it shouldn't be the contact point should be a municipal employee available, 7 days a week, not a committee that only meets every 2 weeks or something.
right, but we want to make sure that the committees
Yes,
are
absolutely.
not frozen out of it.
They're advisory, they should be part of the underlying decision-making process that results in direction to the consultant.
Perhaps, Jack, we could do it with planning, permitting, and inspections and have 3 names on, have
Yes, absolutely.
either have, Jen, Lauren, and myself as names. So that way we could, it's not just one person. Jen might be the lead person. I don't want to speak for her, but that way, between the 3 of us, we could kind of, if one's not able to attend, the other one can, and that's where the direction could come from. And we could submit the information to the other working groups.
I agree totally, John.
Mhm. No, I think that's exactly it. I think you just want to make sure that it's very clear that planning and select board are included in the process, but not with the ability to direct the process.
Okay, so how about, let's take this one at a time. So at the top, we're going to say the selected consultant will work for the town planning, building and inspection. Oh, sorry, planning department. And building and building.
So it's
and
planning, permits and inspections. That's probably, it's a
Oh.
PP&I, so that's what they call it.
Planning, permitting.
And inspections.
Okay, well, there we go. We've got one department.
Mhm.
That way, all 3 of us are covered.
Gotcha. So the selected consultant will work for the town planning, permitting and inspections department.
And I would get rid of the names because, it's gonna be a long process. The names may change. I hope they don't, but they may.
Yeah,
Well, if
no,
we
but
keep
every
giving them
time
all
you
this
make
work
it,
to do, they'll probably all quit.
well, no, but Peter's right. Every time you make it specific like that, and then somebody gets sick or goes on
Yes.
leave, you have to change the whole document and.
Yep.
I mean, it's unnecessary.
Well, I guess the only point in including this language is it signals to the folks that are applying the RFP that there are sort of talented and knowledgeable members on the town side that they're going to be interacting with. So that's why I suggest we include and it's very typical to include a brief blurb about who those members are.
Why don't you make it an addendum or something?
Yeah, exactly. Just put little bios in the addendum.
Okay,
Because this actually tells you nothing about Lauren's capabilities or qualifications. It simply gives you her title. And you probably want to enhance that bio a bit, but not, but as I said, as an addendum.
okay. I mean, we do upfront describe again, who's on the zoning bylaw working group.
Yeah, but
We can get
there's no real bios.
There's no real bio. No, you're right. Okay. All right. I will, sorry. You guys are probably getting sick from. All right. So the first sentence is going to read, the selected consultant will work for the town planning, permitting and inspections department and under the direct guidance of the master plan implementation committee zoning bylaw working group.
No, I don't buy that.
Okay.
It's got to be one, they.
One or the other.
Yeah,
Well-
one of the,
No,
Guys,
guys,
we're issuing the RFP.
this is,
So we have to have a role in this and we are, I mean, the town is hiring the
well,
consultant.
maybe we shouldn't be issuing it. Maybe it should be the town, the town department.
Okay, I mean,
No.
it typically is, I'm not doing anything atypical here. So I feel like we're kind of re-engineering what Michelle Leary is already comfortable with. Generally, the committee that is going to be working with the consultant is in charge of issuing the RFP in joint consultation with the town. So we have a role in this. I don't think we can abdicate our role in this RFQ process or.
I just go back to, you can't have two inputting, you can't have
yes,
Have
you
two
can.
bosses.
input.
Why don't you say the selected consultant will work with the town planning, blah, 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 under the direct guidance? I don't know. I mean, that gives you one direct boss, which is you, Katie, and your group, but it also speaks to the work product, the work process that is going to be, you know, heavily involved with the 3-person or the department.
All right, so our committee is going to lead, direct, and assign the consultant that in all work product. That's what that says.
Yes. I mean, yeah,
Okay, so, you know, as Jack has been talking about, then we have to be really diligent about making sure that we have agreement on direction from the shareholders, the select board, the planning board, ZBA, on everything we do.
Why this is so complicated.
Well, it is complicated.
No,
And,
it's not complicated. Let me chime in here because I gave Katie a few comments, you know, on pages 10 and 12 and 13, and it's all about what is the work product here. And it was ambiguous to me, and it stated very clearly, and it was stated on page 13 and spot, that this consultant is not writing the bylaw. This consultant is helping us write the bylaw. This consultant is helping us sell the bylaw, but is not writing the bylaw. And that is going to be under the direction of this board and this board alone. That's what we're charged to do. The selectmen aren't writing it with us. The planning board will get to review it, and we will certainly seek their input during the writing process, but they're not writing it. And I think we have to be very clear about what this person's role is here. And it's not to write the bylaw. So
I
they
agree.
are going to work in consultation with, under the direction of this committee, because we are the ones who are charged with writing the bylaw.
I agree.
So my changes, the changes I suggested, Katie, I won't go over them line by line here. They were relatively small, but was to take out any ambiguity in that point that this consultant is writing the bylaw. It clearly says on page 13, and needs to just be emphasized elsewhere, that it's being written by the group and council, the zoning working group and council.
Well, I agree.
I agree. I buy
Okay,
that.
then
I agree with
all
that.
this stuff about worrying whose friggin' nose is in the process is irrelevant. They're going to work on a day-to-day basis with town hall staff because that's just the practical reality, because we all have other things to do. But they're going to be ultimately operating under our direction because we're the ones writing the bylaw, and we will seek the input of other boards when we need to. I don't want to give a veto power here over this whole process to the select board or to the planning board at this point. The planning board has its statutory role and they will have an input role, but you know, they're not the authors here.
I don't know, am I muted?
no, you're not.
Oh, okay. I agree with Tom, by the way. I think what the involvement of planning board and select board is critical. Maybe we pull off critical, but I think that you don't want to freeze them out of discussing it.
I'm not
But it's
suggesting that.
clear that we write this. We use a consultant to give us guidance in doing that, but the responsibility lies with us. I do think that we want to make sure that if members of the planning board and the select board wish to have some input or concern, that they're certainly welcome to do so, but they do not write it, we write it. Does that make sense?
It does. And so I have a suggestion. So we'll say something to the fact that involvement of planning board and select input from the planning board and select board is important.
Yeah, that's all.
And I'm going to say, please see.
It'll just be, say input will be solicited from these other boards from time to time as required.
So we have a specific section. Guys, I'm trying to be just politically savvy about our review next week and making sure that nobody feels like they're
Well, then
they're,
I would go to the language that Tom suggested rather than just say they're important.
so, but we actually state exactly how they are important. It says during the course of the consultant's work, it will be necessary to interact with committees beyond the zoning bylaw working group. The following town committees have knowledge, reports, and work product completed or in process that are relevant to the
All right,
company.
well, then just reference that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't deal with it up above because you've left out conservation. You've left out the ZBA.
Okay,
You know, somebody may get their nose out of joint because you left them out. If you start repeating yourself,
okay,
you're just confusing, or if you're being selective, you're confusing. The
Okay.
select board and the planning board have been mentioned 3 times, and the other boards that have a stake in this haven't been mentioned. I don't know, but I
okay,
mean, and it goes without saying, no town in the world is going to write bylaws without input from the planning board, which has a statutory responsibility anyway, and the select board.
okay.
Right.
Okay, I think we've beaten this one to death. But I think I do think it's important that you guys are aware that I want to make sure that if it comes up in discussions next week, that we can refer to the other expectations and assure the planning board
Sure.
or the select
Mhm.
board that their input is valuable, and we expect the consultant to selectively interact with their boards to make sure that their input is considered throughout the process.
Right, and you'll be guiding that, or our committee will be guiding that interaction process
Yes,
anyway.
okay. Okay. Okay, so that's accountability. And Tom, I did get your comments.
Yeah, I don't need to go over them line by line. Just,
Okay,
again, the point to the rest of the group is just to emphasize who's the author of the bylaw.
Yeah, that's perfect.
okay.
Mhm. I agree.
Because we had this, I wanted to be sensitive to that because we've had this conversation a couple times at the working group level that we don't want to cede control of the bylaw content to a third party, but we do want third parties' input and their perspective in order to credentialize the work that we have undertaken as a working group. So,
Yeah, and my point only is that if you want a good product out of this process, they can only have specific direction from one central point.
Mhm.
yep. Okay,
All the rest can bubble away underneath forever, but it has to come to a product that is communicated clearly to the consultant.
yes, and we'll all get little placards that say the buck stops here.
Which is why we're not letting Pescatori off the hook. I mean, excuse me.
Exactly. Okay. All right. So accountability. Thank you for those inputs. And John, do you mind sending me just a quick 1 sentence on your background? And Jen, you're going to do the same, and I'll just footnote it.
Will do.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Scope of services. So here's the highlights. In terms of what we're asking for, help establish a project timeline and phased approach which meet the working group's goals. Provide a diagnostic report of the existing bylaws, organize the reformatting and reorganization of the bylaws based on input and direction from the zoning bylaw working group. Conceive a structure and schedule to help prepare materials, implement a range of public engagement activities.
Katie,
Yep.
where or how are change mechanisms described in here?
What do you mean change? I'm sorry.
Well, in other words, we're gonna have a version 1, a version 2, version 3, we'll finally get there. Is there a process to keep control over how changes are made? Who makes changes? I guess that's us.
So,
I mean, should that be in the scope, I guess I'm saying, is how change requests are documented?
so I think there's two things we're
Because
balancing.
in all projects that I've ever managed, you know, the killer has always been changes that are made.
So I think two things. One, we have to, part of what we're looking to do in this RFQ is solicit some perspective from potential consultants. And so in the scope of services, you want to describe what your needs are, but then allow them to come back in their responses and make their recommendation based on how they have worked with towns in the past around best practices. And so I hear you about change control, but I think that is one of the things that you want the consultant to describe in their RFP versus
Okay, that makes sense.
you know, I again, like,
Yeah, we don't need to put it in here. We can make sure it's in whatever document comes back.
and there's a perfect example of an interview question that you would want to ask, you know, so you kind of go, so the way the process works is we describe what we think we need. The consultants respond with their version of like what they would recommend. And then we get to poke holes in it by reading the RFQs and then actually interviewing the consultants. And a question is a perfect example of a question that you would want. And typically what I did with the master plan implementation or the master plan consultant is that we came up with a collective set of interview questions that as a working group that the interview committee used on all three applicants. So it was the same set of questions that were asked to all three applicants. So coming up with that set of questions is definitely going to be a January activity that we'll want to undertake.
Yeah, okay.
Have it ready. And then, so I guess, you know, here's what, in my perspective, it's working closely with the working group and town council in reviewing and commenting on substantive changes to the bylaw. So their job is not to make the changes, but to comment on potential changes. And then most importantly is providing the necessary materials for the 40A public hearing. So the two pieces of heavy lift that from my perspective that were missing right now is somebody to help conceive and structure and prepare materials for public engagement, and then help do the heavy lifting around the materials necessary for the 40A public hearings and annual town meeting. So that's kind of the overview in terms of the scope of services. And then it goes on to detail the two critical components, which are the public participation and the zoning redraft and reorganization. And the public participation description basically lays out the fact that they're going to be responsible for providing content and materials, responsible for summaries of the input received at the public participation events. And then we list out potential types of public engagement, but again, leaving the opportunity for the consultant to come back and say, you know what, here's what I've found effective, given that anything we're going to do is a hybrid combination of Zoom and in person. So this is where hopefully in our RFQ responses, we're going to get some ideas that we like or don't hopefully like, or kind of expand on what we're already thinking of. And then the next piece is the actual zoning reorganization and redraft. And this is where I laid in the expectation is that sorry, looking for the language, Tom, that oh yeah. Right here, it states, as it relates to the redraft, the zoning bylaw working group and town council will take the lead on drafting the new bylaw language, which reflects strategies contained in the master plan, but the consultant will review and comment based on their expertise and input from the public participation process. Lastly, the consultant shall provide concepts, ideas, and models for amendments to zoning bylaws as needed to implement key master plan policies. So basically, as it relates to the redraft, we're leveraging their experience, but not making them directly responsible for the drafting. And that's kind of the balance that I was trying to balance here.
Yeah, I like that.
So I'm gonna pause here. Did anybody else have any other comments?
Nope.
Concerns? Okay. Okay. This is the other expectations section, just again, making sure that other boards and committees are acknowledged in terms of needing to be part of the process. So did I miss anything here? I've got planning board, select board, master plan implementation committee, zoning board of appeals, and Concom.
Open space and recreation.
Sorry, Peter.
Come on.
I know. All right. This is why we have Peter on our committee.
I know.
Jack, am I missing anything?
No, I think you're doing a very good job.
Okay. All right. This is the attempt to make sure that everybody is heard from a committee perspective.
Yes, I understand.
Final deliverables. Again,
Really?
I'm sorry.
The consultant will prepare final draft zoning bylaw?
No,
Okay.
I think I caught that change that I suggested to
Gotta
Katie.
say, what does that mean?
All right.
Will assist in preparing.
Well,
Will assist in the presentation or something, or presentation materials, but
how about,
bylaw itself is,
I had suggested assist in preparing because they might. I mean, there seems to be tasks here where they're going to compile a lot of the changes rather than one of us doing it on their computer.
yeah, I mean, town meeting materials are kind of town council and, you know,
well, there's a bigger marketing thing around this because there's going to need to be a presentation at town meeting.
okay,
There needs to be.
Which you get to do.
which you get to do, but, you know, then say preparation for town meeting, you know, or something. Assist in the you know, the communication materials
So, okay, will assist in preparing.
or the communication program.
I want to put them on the hook to prepare all the materials.
Yeah, but they're not, you know, as you and Tom keep saying, you know, we're doing the bylaw.
There's a difference between the 200-page document and all the attenuate stuff that has to happen.
Well,
Like,
that's what I'm saying. It ought to say the communication program
Won't be too
for the redraft. Because that's really what you want them to do.
how about this? The assistant will, sorry.
I understand what you're doing, Katie, so don't, you know.
The prospective consultant will assist in preparing final redraft of the bylaws and prepare all presentation and communication materials for annual town meeting, included but not limited to the presentation, a summary of the comprehensive zoning redraft and reorganization process, a detailed and complete outline of the reorg and redraft, an executive summary in plain English, and a summary of the changes anticipated in phase 2. This is basically,
Yeah.
I envision there being kind of a PR packet that we get out into the community that has a number of these elements that people have in their hands, and that's what they're reading instead of the friggin' 200 pages.
Yeah, that's your communication program.
Okay, all right, so,
It won't be too much.
okay. All right. Final deliverables. Okay. The next gets into some nitty gritty around the submission process.
I assume Michelle,
Yes, this is all Michelle's
you know,
bailiwick and
this is
she'll,
all, this
yeah.
is all her stuff and,
Yeah.
it's what she needs and that's that.
yep. The minimum requirements is sort of what the response will look like. So it's going to include a cover letter, then it's going to include a report that basically has them comment on the scope of services. Then they're asked to provide a summary statement of why they believe they're the right prospective consultant for the job, an organizational chart of who's going to be on their team, a description of their firm, a list of the team's 3 most recent public rezoning experiences, copies of work product from completed, so examples of the work product that they completed, and then the resumes of the principals and the key staff that are going to be on our project team. Again, allowing us to hopefully evaluate the qualifications.
Referrals we can talk to.
So yes.
References,
So references is right here. So when they actually do the 3 rezoning experiences, name and location of the community, name and phone number of the project contacts.
Okay, all right.
So this is what they're going to provide in terms of their
Yeah.
references, and then we
Yeah.
can do additional.
do me a favor, Katie, just
Yeah.
after, please provide the following, add the word references.
Thank
Okay,
you. Yeah, that's
Because
what-
it
that's
should
what
be
I was
quite
really-
clear that we
Okay.
have the right and
yeah,
to
that's
contact
kinda-
people, not just know that they work. for
that's kind of what I
Brookline.
was scratching at too.
okay. And we will likely want to do additional references that they don't list.
Sure.
But this will give us a starting place. Although I have to say, like, when I did reference checks for master plan consultants, most of the planning directors that I talked to were very candid about what they thought. And there were a couple that were like, here's what you got. You know, if this doesn't feel like what your community needs, then they're not your consultant. All right, this is again, just more stuff that we get 2 bid envelopes, one, the price proposal, and then the second, the RFP itself. The price proposal is set aside until after we do the,
Qualifications.
request for qualifications response. Good catch. Okay. Okay. It's all that. And then this is a little bit boilerplate, but but is actually the mechanism by which we have to review the bids when the qualifications come in. So this is what the interview committee will be doing. Step 1 is they are going to get the RFQs and read through them. And then they review them using kind of a matrix of relevant experience, staffing plan and methodology, evaluation of the qualitative nature of their approach, and then evaluation of the written product that they provided in terms of samples of other work that they've done. So there are basically 4 criteria that the RFPs will be graded on, not advantageous, advantageous, and highly advantageous. And using these 4 qualities, you then select the top 3 candidates that you want to interview. And it doesn't have to be 3, but typically it is 3. So that's step 1 that the interview committee will do to get to the finalists that get interviewed. And then step 3 is the interview itself. And this basically says, again, how are you going to grade them in the interview process? And you can develop, as I said before, specific questions that you want to have asked to every single finalist around experience and qualifications, methodology, ability to perform, familiarity with the town of Cohasset, and other. And again, you grade them based on this point system. So we can adjust the points if people want, you know, higher point quantities in various buckets, but it's basically split a third between experience and qualifications. Their specific methodology that they're recommending in terms of our zoning redraft, and then their ability to perform. And then they're given a little bit of bonus points on whether they know Cohasset or can establish the fact that they know Cohasset, and then other things like communications skills and the financial stability of the consulting firm. So that's the criteria. And then the last thing that I included was a listing of all the plans and records available. And what we agreed is I've got all of this already set aside on my computer. I'm going to give a copy of all of these records to Lauren and Jen, and they're going to upload them onto the master plan implementation committee's website page, so that consultants can actually review them. And the point of providing this is to, one, allow the potential respondents to better understand Cohasset and where we've been and where we want to go. But I also think it's important for them to understand and establish kind of our working group's work product. So I went through and I made kind of a subjective decision around what to include. Things like our charge, the presentation that we just made on November 9th to the joint committee. They can have access to all of our minutes. And then in terms of sample work products, you know, I included examples of kind of the detail that we've gotten into so that we can establish up front with any prospective consultants that we've actually undertaken quite a bit of work and we're ready to hit the ground running. So if there's anything missing from people's perspective or things we think is just too much detail, then I'm happy to delete. But I went through all of our meetings for the last 12 months and kind of hand selected what I thought were good examples of the benchmarking and research. And
how is this? Could you go back to the beginning of a sample of work product?
Yeah.
I mean, I would like them to feel free to selectively ask for this information as opposed to literally 200 or 300 pages that somebody at town hall is going to have to organize and send out. They may not want to see every single one of these, but each of these goes 2 to 8 pages.
So the point is that we're going to upload them to the town website and they can selectively.
Okay, so they can selectively, they don't have to, it's not part of our selection process. How many do they review or call up?
Exactly. And they're going to go through and probably click on half of them and
yeah, okay, as long as it isn't.
Yeah, it's not going to be Jen or Lauren's job to
mandatory kind of
administer the distribution on this. The tricky thing is that if one thing is given to one prospective bidder, it has to be given to all. And so that's why putting it on the town website as a resource to all consultants is like the best practice or the
Okay.
Yeah, let them select.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. And again, part of it was trying to establish that we just haven't been twiddling our thumbs for 12 months. We've actually done substantive work that they can jump into and leverage going forward. And then from here, it gets into really boilerplate stuff in terms of the actual 30B process. The only thing that I still need from Michelle is supposedly KP Law is reviewing our standard contract for services, and I just need an updated version of that to include in the RFQ before it gets published in January. But we have got time to get that standard agreement incorporated. So that's the RFQ. Tom, I'll incorporate your comments. If anybody else, as they're,
Yeah, I'll finish up my read.
Okay, thank you. And if anybody else has this is their bedtime reading and wants to shoot me a quick email or call me with anything, I'm happy to incorporate. My My job is to get this turned around and out to the planning board and select board over the weekend so that those boards have time to review it in advance of Tuesday and Wednesday. With the planning board, the review of this RFQ is up first at 6:30. So that's Wednesday, the 15th. At 6:30. I've posted it as a joint meeting for the working group so that if people want to attend and listen to the planning board's comments, we can do that. And for the select board, I don't know the agenda time yet, so I'll let folks know. I believe they're going to work on the agenda today and tomorrow, so we'll get slotted in there somewhere. Jack, I don't know, how busy is the select board agenda? I'm sure it's crammed.
Yeah, it's a very interesting time of year.
With only one meeting too, so you guys.
I know, and they're also, they the last meeting, they tried to slip in negotiating the new town manager contract, which I don't know why they would want to do it right in the busiest time of the year, but I think that's been put off, but I don't know, it's controversial.
All right, so we'll take whatever late evening time we get dealt in terms of getting comments, but hopefully, again, you tell me, Jack, I don't know how involved your committee wants to be, but I think it's fair to ask for comments.
Well, I think my sense is, I've already said it, that the select board, it's difficult to get so much into it, but I think it's important that we have a placeholder. So if select board members, has an interest, they can be, they have the authority, or not the authority, but they have the right to see what's going on. And I think that's important because we can't micromanage everything in town. But if there's something like a constituent says what's going on, you just want to make sure that the select board, who has the ultimate responsibility, has the ability to see what's going on. And once you do that, I don't see that there's any appetite to micromanage. I certainly don't have an appetite to micromanage. And the select board also does believe, at least I believe, it's very important to support the commissions and committees.
Okay. Okay, so we won't expect, I have no plans on reviewing the whole thing. I'm basically going to say,
No.
if anybody has comments, please comment. I'm taking any and all. The only thing that I do want to have an explicit conversation with your committee, Jack, is on the RFQ interview committee itself, because our expectation, at least this is the draft proposal, is that the committee is going to be an interview committee of 5, 3 from town hall, John, Lauren, and Jen. Michelle is kind of our guide in this, but she doesn't have a voice. She just makes sure that we're following the process. And then in terms of committee members, 2 from our working group, 2 from the planning board, and 1 from the select board. I'm open to any suggestions on this, but this is a little bit of what Michelle guided us to in terms of like a reasonable number of people. The only caveat is that anybody that signs up for this interview committee must read all the RFP responses, complete the selection matrices, and attend the select meeting, which is where you select the finalists, and then participate in all 3 interviews. And that would require people to be available the week of February 14th to 18th to review and rank. We're going to have a selection meeting on the 21st, which can be done via Zoom. And then the interviews for the finalists are slated for Tuesday, March 1st, and it'll be back to back to back. 1 at 5, 1 at 6, 1 at 7, or something like that.
In the RFQ, the January 19th, there's a pre-proposal conference.
Yes.
Answer questions. What's the makeup of that?
That is basically Michelle Leary and 1 or 2 members of our working group. So it just gives the consultants the ability to ask questions or say,
What do you mean by that?
What do you mean by that? Or I'd like to see a sample of XYZ. And the reason it's kind of Michelle's show to run, we're there as kind of the people that will be helping answer the question, but whatever questions get asked, Michelle has to document and then send out responses to all prospective bidders so that everybody has the same information.
Yeah, okay, just wanted. to
Yeah, no,
understand
exactly.
what it was.
Yeah, and frankly, our RFQ could be so good, or our select materials that we're going to post on the town website are so complete that nobody shows for that. But if people do show, it gives you a sense of who is getting ready to bid. So
It's a process requirement.
yeah, exactly. So Jack, think about select board member. Do you is that something?
Oh, let me see. So I have a heads up on how to avoid this. Okay.
Exactly. Or if you're really smart, think ahead and say, hey, Jean, I know you've been super interested in zoning. This is your opportunity to help shape.
Well, I think Jean's, I think of the members who have the expertise, it would be between Jean and myself. And nothing against the other members, but you kind of have to be spending some time bringing them up to speed on the, as we all know, a lot of the devil is in the details of this type of work.
Yeah.
So I think I just hung myself.
Well, so I don't think we're going to need a decision on next Tuesday, but I think we're going to request that by January, those appointments are made from the select board. So you can continue to craft whether you want to sign up or
I just have to look at those times. We have a couple of longstanding, mini vacations going on, and I have a couple of, business conferences that I really have to go to.
The only hard and fast one that somebody has to physically be there for is the March 1st. The rest of this, the review and ranking could be done remotely, and the selection meeting can also be done via Zoom, but again, people have to commit to do that.
So I'll have to check for the March 1st. I'm probably going to end up, doing this because I think it will be a lot easier for everybody.
Okay.
But we'll see. The select board may say anybody but Jack.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes that happens. Surprise.
And Tom, I guess the same question with planning board is that we obviously have two members from the zoning bylaw two members of the board on the zoning bylaw working group, and then the planning board can select two new. So we'll sort of leave that open for you guys to discuss on Wednesday. And then in terms of the members of the working group, we can all arm wrestle as to who gets the privilege on that one after the planning board and select board make their selections. I guess that leaves Peter, Woody, Cassie, and myself as the four candidates for the two potentially, if Jack takes the select board and Tom takes one of the planning board, but we'll see.
Yeah.
That'll be a January appointment to that. I think that's it on the RFQ process. What was next up on the agenda? So next up on the agenda was just meeting dates. So I was going to propose the next meeting for the first week of January. I am hoping to get through next week and then sort of take a 2-week hiatus from committee stuff the week of the 20th and the 27th. And I hope everybody else does the same. So I was looking at the week of January 3rd for a meeting, figuring Monday, Tuesday, people would dig out of their inboxes and holiday overhang, and was looking at either the 5th or the 6th.
Either for me.
Yeah, either for me as well.
I have no preference at this point.
Okay.
It's fine, either one.
Either one.
Okay.
The
Go
5th
ahead.
might work better for me, but
Okay. Well, there we have it. We'll make it on the 5th. Tom, John, Jen, preference of time. I can do morning or afternoon.
I'm good with anything.
That 10 o'clock, 10:30 timeframe works pretty well.
You make that work, Tom?
Yeah, I guess at the moment, but
We're gonna say 10:30 on the 5th.
Okay.
Okay. And then last but not least, next week's lineup, 3 nights in a row. Woo! Get excited. Special town meeting on the 13th, select board on the 14th, and planning board on the 15th. I am ready and raring to go. For special town meeting, I had an email from Dan Evans, the moderator. He has given us 5 minutes per article as his kind of goal. Like we did at annual town meeting, I was going to prepare just a 1-page slide for Article 6 and a 1-page slide for Article 7, which hit the highlights as to why these articles are being proposed, recap the votes that were in favor for both of them, and then open it to questions. And again, I think we've done our homework. We've gotten the votes. We know that that Clark Brewer potentially will stand up and speak at special town meeting, which is his right. I think we address his concerns directly, and then leave it to town meeting vote. I did have a couple thoughts in terms of like, if Clark gets up and speaks, I think it's important to highlight the fact that, you know, this working group has met 40 times over the last, year. We've had 9 meetings with the planning board. So there's quite a bit of work and interaction that's gone on. I went back and I specifically documented when we had talked about definitions and the need to update definitions. We included that specifically in the February 3rd update to the planning board. It was one of the recommendations that we came forward specifically with at the June 2nd presentation to the planning board, where we gave our residential zoning recommendations. We previewed with the planning board on August 10th a series of special town meeting articles, and one of which was the definitional changes. And then we obviously had the public hearing process. So in terms of like this being something that is like done too quickly, I think there's a way to rebut that gently, to say that there has been a lot of thoughtful work leading up to this, and the planning board has had the ability to input at least 5 opportunities over the last year, and leave it at that. I think that's going to explain to the average citizen that this isn't coming out of nowhere.
And I think that if you just do bullet points, bang, we met on this, the number of times, the factual, there's no need to embellish it. Just a statement that the 40
Yeah.
meetings, and point by point that, yes, it has already been addressed by the committee. And I don't think we have to go into.
Yeah, I would underscore
Yeah.
what Jack's saying. As soon as you start saying, look how hard I worked,
Yeah.
and all the people get turned off or are, think you're trying to make points at somebody else's expense. And the other succinct point I think we want to draw is that we have invented, in my estimation at least, nothing. These are all a restatement or a literal statement of state law.
Mhm.
All these are embedded in the state law. The fact that our bylaw is silent doesn't make our bylaws, it doesn't give it any virtue. It creates confusion on the part of applicants, citizens, and whatever.
Yep.
Yeah, this is state law, and we're just codifying or incorporating it.
So perhaps that's the lead statement, is to keep on reiterating that, this is a restatement in our bylaws.
And that's been Clark's major point, is that why are you inventing these definitions and mucking around with a perfectly good bylaw?
Yeah, we're just attempting to harmonize with the state.
Yeah. It makes
Okay.
everybody's job easier from John Hallen's on down.
Okay. All right. So I'll lead with that, and try and gently say that this has been thought out.
And
Based
there
on
are
the
plenty of
work.
opportunities for input. Yeah, and as Jack is saying, you can read, if you can read, you can see it.
Yeah.
Very simple.
We've met 5
Simple,
times or
basic.
10 times and leave it at that.
Yep.
And don't get into the specifics about his
Yep.
points, because when the minute things get confusing, it spins out of control. It's just bang, bang, bang.
Yep.
That's it.
I think not giving this oxygen and just rebutting in the
Right.
briefest possible way
Mhm.
is the way to go with this. And then
Yes.
getting to an up-down vote as quickly as possible.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right. so we have-
Just one other question.
Yeah.
Will Clark be speaking as a citizen or as a board member of the planning board? No, I don't mean.
No,
to-
I know, I know, I
you
know.
what I mean,
He
just
is certainly wearing, we know he's wearing two hats, but
yeah, but just,
I think
We
he
should
will-
not point that
Well,
out.
he's allowed to have the opposing view from the committee.
okay, yep. So
Yeah.
it could state that.
Yeah, I think
And
he will-
it's his choice as to how whether he presents himself as the opposing view or a citizen.
or both.
Or both.
Okay.
Yeah, I think my goal with Clark is not to try and script him, because the more that you try and script him or position him, the more he's gonna react and
Yeah, he's right.
yeah, I did talk to him this week just to make sure that he was aware we were bringing the RFQ. I did not literally mention special town meeting and was just encouraging him to comment and be thoughtful on the RFQ process and the next phase of this. And he seemed to be in a good place, but again, I didn't want to try and manhandle him in any way. He's going to do what he's going to do, and our job is to succinctly rebut. So,
We
Just take
we
that
need to
position,
be,
period.
we need to be clear and above the fray
Yep.
and be very professional. I mean, there are other issues floating around, and there may be some disclosure things that we may feel he should make, but that's not our point. Our point is to present our work product clearly, that the work that went into it, and I think the town will support us.
Yep. Okay. All right. Well, I'm feeling, as I said, outside of having 3 back-to-back night meetings, I'm feeling ready and energized to have this conversation.
I don't have a life anyway, so I don't much care.
You know, I honestly, my stress point, and this was true when my kids were like at Osgood, is still like, how do I get dinner ready and leave the house in some kind of state with people fed? So I'm gonna have to think about my meal plan, but besides that, I'm good. Okay.
hey,
All right, guys. So I will see everybody on Monday at 7 o'clock at the gym. Thank you for everybody's input. And with no further ado, I think we should adjourn at 11:47.
Motion to adjourn.
I gotta run. Right, perfect.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you, guys. And I'll CC everybody on the final RFQ that goes out over the weekend.
Great.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Good
thanks,
job.
Thank
guys.
you.
Good job.
Well done.